Cor Hoekstra. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Amicus. As illustrated by the events of Matthew, global aid is broken. Global aid represents a $160 billion industry on an annual basis, which is yet to be disrupted by technology. Combine that with the mindset of today's donor, which is increasingly skeptical as to how their dollars are being spent. Enter Amicus. The founders of Amicus were pioneers in the third-party logistics industry. Amicus is a software and business process company that is focused on the business of aid. We seek to fundamentally change the way that global aid is funded, sourced, shipped, and delivered. The way it works is a donor makes a donation, a gift, to a specific project. That specific project is then executed by an NGO using the Amicus platform, which is software and business process, including last mile delivery to the recipient. Amicus shares the data that it collects on the platform back with the donor. The donor receives transparency, accountability, and measured impact. Amicus receives a 4.5 transaction fee of the funded plan value, and the NGO receives state-of-the-art access to technology and process capability to effectively fulfill its mission. Most importantly, the recipient receives aid where and when it's needed. We are Amicus, and our premise is simple: giving that gets there. Thank you.
I thought that was really good, man. Like, you kind of hit all the points that, like, I mean, my questions are all, like, as an intro pitch, I thought you told a nice story, and you were a good communicator, and you threw out, I mean, I like to hear some numbers about kind of how it works. You laid out the business model. You kind of laid out your credibility. I mean, I thought it was good. I have questions about sort of, you know, where you're at in terms of stage, like, are you live, are you not live, do you have customers, do you not have customers? I think it's always difficult to make money in what's historically thought of as a nonprofit space, right? And 4.5 points is a pretty thin margin, right? So I'm curious as to whether or not you're a for-profit or nonprofit, because that's a big differentiator. But I thought it was really good. That's what I thought.
So I'll take the opposite side of that coin a little bit. I thought it was, and I realize it's only 2 minutes. It was maybe a little too high level for me, and the reason I say that is because I've probably heard 25 pitches in the last 18 months of platforms and companies that think they're going to change the way that people donate to not-for-profits and the way that's going to be made transparent and accountable and everything else. And so I'm hearing a lot of the buzzwords, but it wasn't enough that I would want to come up to you afterwards and be like, he's really on to something, and I want to really learn more. And I can only speak for myself. I do know it's an issue. In fact, we had a very successful investment with a company called Social Solutions that built out a platform that does this for the human services not-for-profit space. So I know there's a need, and I know there's a value, but it is a noisy market from the investment standpoint of dealing with individual donors, and I don't know that that's what you said as far as your customer, and I'll give you a chance to answer this in a minute. It sounds like your customer is the NGO, right? Now it's making their relationship with the individual donor stronger, right? And I get that. So that's, but I would just be a little bit wary of, it is a balance, and we obviously talk out of both sides of our mouth, but between the really high level and getting granular enough that you, again, separate yourself from the pack with respect to other things that are sounding similar.
Yeah, let me pick up on that. So how many, these guys are professional investors. I'm an operating firm. I'm like an adjunct professor. I work at a startup. How many pitches do y'all hear a year?
We looked at 870 companies last year.
870 companies last year, right? How many investments did you make? 4, 6? Okay, right? You should know that number. Like, we're all friends up here, trust me. Yeah. But like, when you come up and you pitch, right? Like, I've never heard a pitch like this before, but I'm not a professional investor, right? Whatever your topic is, it's very likely that they've heard of it. But it's really, really likely that they've heard of it. And so, if you act like it's magic and secret and special, right? You can be excited about it, that's fine, but like, you guys, like, you've heard a pitch like the other two also, right?
Yeah.
Maybe not the turbines. Right? Yeah, right?
No, the turbine is actually but so I think sometimes it's almost as useful to talk about style as it is to talk about the content itself. Because I think it does make a difference. I like your style. It was just a little too slow for a 2-minute pitch, but I like it. I think sometimes people talk too much. They try to say too many things. I think you try to say a little too much for 2 minutes, but I like the pauses that you were putting. I like the deliberate nature of it. I think you need to organize it a little bit more. And in 2 minutes is a little unrealistic, but you got to play with that. What I don't like is boasting about how wonderful you are. I don't think that works, especially when people hear 875 pitches. When somebody talks or says, I'm going to change the world, you want people to feel that way. You don't want them to hear you say that. It does make a difference. Believe it, it's just we hear so many pitches that sometimes we look for the smallest, littlest things to tell no to people. And things like that make a difference. And I don't think that you're being too egotistical about this, or it's just that I think it's just, in general, when you go get the wrong person in front of you, they're just going to say no, just because of that. But I do think that the deliberate nature is good. The other thing is, I didn't think you were saying great things about how you're going to change the world. I don't think we kind of delivered on exactly. So there was a downward effect to when you actually told us how you were going to do it. It didn't seem that impressive. I think what I heard is that you allow for transparency. So you want you want the product or the technology to show that. So what I got from what you're doing is that you're offering a level of transparency that is unique. That's hard to achieve. But I don't know how that alone changes the nature of this problem, because it's such a huge issue that software. I don't know even how software alone allows some donor to be able to actually see or to actually an NGO to deliver a piece of aid or some product to a place that is really hard to get to. How do you change that?
Yeah, absolutely. So to answer your question, Chris, it's a for-profit company. However, so it's a for-profit software company. However, the go-to-market vehicle is a non-profit. The platform itself, so this is not a transparency for the donor play. The customer is the NGO. And over time, what we are seeking to create is a tailored, think of it as a tailored operational backbone, ERP, for the nonprofit community. Now, there's been many companies that have gone there before, Helios, 8Matrix, and they've all failed because the NGO does not spend money because of the way that success is being measured from an overhead perspective. So the business model is that Amicus, the software for-profit company, receives it revenue on a transaction fee of the plans as they are being funded. And that is like in a $160 billion market. It doesn't make a very big company to make that profitable. But more importantly, we've been thinking about this from a holistic perspective. So it's important that we start with the donor, end with the beneficiary, and ultimately enable the NGO to do a better job themselves and how we come alongside them. So that's the pitch. So Amicus is part Kickstarter, it's part a marketplace like Amazon for global aid supplies, and part FedEx. and we bring that together in a holistic solution.
Cor Hoekstra, thanks, folks. Amicus Global Relief Solutions.